Hello, good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock on Friday and I am here doing a video on overwhelm. I just thought I would let you know that it's quite funny because when you do a live video, obviously you're here live right now, but also you don't really know what happens behind the scenes. So you get ready a little bit and you get your tripod and stuff set up. But what I didn't realise is I was wearing a white top and I just put the screen on here and suddenly it came up as this like bright light underneath here. So for 5 seconds I've just been going, oh, what am I going to wear? So you'll see that, and that's quite funny when you go live, if anyone else has ever done a live broadcast. So what we're talking about today, we're talking about overwhelm and the feeling that you can get very much commonly in our lives, I would say. So this week I wrote a blog post on the 7 steps to dealing with overwhelm. I shortened it to 3 so it could be a little bit more accessible. The 7 full steps are on my website, which I'll tell you about later. But I thought that the idea of overwhelm, the word overwhelm, is quite common and we talk about it quite a lot in our lives every day. But I wanted to go into it a little bit more and think about what it means and what we might define it by. So, overwhelm, if you look at it, if you Google it, there's loads of definitions. There were 3 that really stood out for me and I'm going to say them now. So one of them is overwhelmed is to affect someone's emotions in a very powerful way. That's quite interesting because that suggests that overwhelm is being done to us. So it's almost like it's a passive emotion and that somebody else has to be involved. So an interesting one. And then the second one is to exist in such a way, to exist in such great amounts that someone or something cannot deal with them or something. So the idea of being overwhelmed by an emotion or a set of things that are kind of weighing us down. And related to that, there was a third one, which I think I have here, which I thought was quite nice. So to bury or drown beneath a huge mass of something, especially water. So they're like the really physical and visual approaches to thinking about overwhelm. And when we tend to think of overwhelm as humans, they are their feelings rather than actual things that necessarily are, being put on us like water. So I wanted to cover the idea that we sometimes wake up feeling overwhelmed, whatever our situation is, and maybe if you discover that you're feeling overwhelmed, you might have even started your day in that way. Like, what was it that you actually did when you woke up? Did you open up your phone and see something that was a little bit annoying or scary, or you realised you had an extra thing to add to your to-do list on that day? That can be overwhelming, especially when there's a lack of control about how to deal with that overwhelm. So we talk about overwhelm a lot in the cancer world as well. Why is overwhelm so big after you've had cancer? I am going really specific here, so this is after your cancer experience. This is a good month, 2 months, 6 months, maybe years after your cancer experience. Things can feel overwhelming. And like I said with those definitions, it's often something that we're overwhelmed by rather than overwhelm itself. So I've written here the kind of a small list of some of the things you might be overwhelmed by. So they include tiredness, fatigue, exhaustion, confusion, worry, anxiety, how much there is to do. I'm overwhelmed by the pressure, by the expectation on me. There will be many more words that you could probably add to that. Those are just some that I hear and that I use when I speak to people as well. So one thing that I pick up on that is how much there is to do. I'm overwhelmed by having too much to do. Outside of the cancer world, we get that feeling, don't we? We look at our diary and we think, it's either too busy or there's not enough, and I'm overwhelmed by how I'm going to make it busy or how I'm going to get those things back that I had before I had cancer. So I just think it's an everyday phrase we use, but actually picking it apart and looking at the words that we might use with it is quite an important thing to do. So I wrote the piece this week and there were 3 steps in the shorter piece, 7 steps in the longer piece, but I'm going to use 2 today. And if you've got a pen and a piece of paper, I've gone old school. You can do your iPad, well, my phone, your Mac if you want, but I've gone old school with pen and piece of paper. This isn't life-changing, this isn't going to be a groundbreaking exercise, but it will be something that might help you to look at what you do next. And often overwhelm is about feeling that there is too much to think about and too much to cope with and too many decisions to be made all at the same time. So let's work out what your next move is, and that's the first step. Step number 1 is to figure out your next move. Your next move is going to be something really, really simple. It can even be something that you do in the next 10 minutes. that gets you towards the idea that you're going to feel less overwhelmed. Because often when we feel overwhelmed, there's so many things going on in our head and our brain, we don't know which way to turn, and it's almost like having too many decisions. So we don't take any decisions because they are too scary, and also if we take one, then what about if the other 7 were the right ones and we chose the wrong path? Actually what we do then is we don't do anything, and we sort of lay there going, I don't know what to do, and I don't know how to feel, and I don't know who to ask, and I don't know. So let's try and get one step closer to knowing what that next move might be. So the idea of step 1 is to figure out your next move. I'm going to do step 2 as well, and then we're going to do the brief exercise. So step 2 is keep it simple. Overwhelm is naturally something that we're going to feel when there's too much going on. And what we want to do is try and do it all, get it all over and done with, finish it all, have it all off our to-do list if there is a to-do list. But actually that's just rushing, and that's running and keeping that kind of high energy going when it might not be something that we need to do. We might need to pare it back down and go, what is just the simple thing that I can do that will help me to move forward a small step? And that's probably the second most important thing I would pick out from the 7 steps that I wrote about. Figure out your next move and keep that move simple, because the more that you add into your pot, your plate, your activities, your to-do list, the more you'll be overwhelmed by. It's almost you've gone so far with your overwhelm that you need to pare it right back, start in a foundational way, and then build it up a little bit, figuring out your next move and keeping it really simple. So if you've got your pen and your piece of paper, I want you just to write in the middle of your piece of paper, overwhelm. If it was me, I'd probably be putting a big circle around it. I don't know, some colour pens or something. And then I just want you to, a bit like a mind map, just have little stems coming out of that word and write down the words that come to mind when you say the word overwhelm. They might be the things that you're overwhelmed by, the actual activities or behaviours, or they might be thoughts that are overwhelming you. I'd just like you to scribble them down. There might be a few, there might be 3, 20, 50, I don't know. But when you've got the chance to do that, you might add to it later on as well. I want you just to take a look at that sheet with overwhelm in the middle and all of the words that you've written on the outside, and see if there's a theme amongst them. See if any of them are common to another one, especially if you hadn't noticed that there was a theme to them. What does it show you that that theme could be? That is kind of interesting, because that will allow you to think about this being the predominant feeling or activity or emotion that you're looking to focus on. And if that is something that doesn't resonate so much, there's another way of looking at what you're focusing on. By looking at your list and your overwhelm drawing, I want you to pick the one that had the kind of most resonance for you, the one that said, if that was off my worry, that would make me feel so much better. Which one was that on the list? And I'd like you to pick that as the thing that you focus on. I then want you to take that one thing or that theme that you've discovered, and either on the same piece of paper or flip it over and start a new one, and write the one activity, behaviour, action that you could take in the next 24 hours that will move you towards understanding that thing, that concept, that goal, we'll call it, maybe a little bit more. Maybe it's talking to someone about it, maybe it's making a phone call to a professional, maybe it's discovering something online that you haven't really been able to do yet because you just haven't had the time or been too overwhelmed with it all to think about that next move. Maybe it's to find out what others do in this situation. Maybe it's to sit down and write that document that you've been meaning to write. Maybe it's to order that shopping that you've been meaning to order. Whatever it is, that one action that you can take in the next 24 hours, I'd like you to write it down, I'd like you to put it in your diary, and I'd like you to carry it out. And when you've watched this video and you have carried out that action, I'd love you to put that in the comments here, because that shows us that you might have taken some action and what maybe it did. Like I said, this isn't going to be groundbreaking, it's not life-changing, it's just one small thing that can happen to support you in your overwhelmed feeling. And I'm going to say this like I usually say this actually, this is an activity anyone can do. This doesn't have to be related to cancer. And if you're doing this after a cancer experience, this doesn't have to be overwhelm necessarily about cancer, it's overwhelm about life and all the things you have to cope with afterwards. So have a go and let us know. I've got the 3 steps to dealing with overwhelm on my blog and various social media channels. I've got the 7 steps, the full 7 steps that's available on my website, and if you go to the bottom of my site, it's on the footer there. My site is www.coachingemily.com, and I'm also really excited to introduce to you a new Facebook group that I've just started. It's a closed group because I wanted it to be the conversations to be private in there actually, and it's for people who are looking to move forward from their cancer experience. I've specified that you need to be a certain time out of your cancer treatment, and you can check out the Facebook group to find out more about that. And feel free to contact me if you'd like to know a bit more information. I'll put the link to the group in the conversation here as well. And again, come back here if you have done your action, your one small action in 24 hours, and let us know, and check out the full 7 steps if you'd like to see them. Have a really lovely weekend. Look forward to seeing you again soon.